They say every woman has a breaking point. Mine came the moment my husband looked at my pregnant body and called me disgusting, not knowing he was speaking to the woman who would walk out on him forever just 72 hours later. He had no idea the clock had already started ticking on the last days of our marriage. I was 7 months pregnant, arms shaking under the weight of grocery bags as I climbed 3 flights of stairs alone. By the time I reached our apartment, I was sweating, dizzy, and fighting the tight ache running up my spine. Alan, meanwhile, sat glued to the couch, headset on, surrounded by empty monster cans like some kind of throne built out of laziness. When I finally set the bags down and tried to catch my breath, he didn't even pause his game. He just glanced at me and said, almost bored, "You're getting disgusting to look at. Seriously, lose the weight fast after the baby, or I'll find someone who actually takes care of herself." His friends laughed through his headset. I didn't. I smiled. A calm, eerie smile that should have terrified him, because that was the moment something inside me snapped into place. Fast forward 72 hours, and I'm sitting in a hotel room staring at the ceiling, still feeling my baby twist inside me as I try to process the tornado of reality I'd been living in. Am I overreacting? Was I numb? Or was this the clarity I'd been begging the universe for? I didn't know. I only knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Alan and I had been together for 5 years, married for 3. We met during a community theater production. He was the charming lead, the musician with big dreams and bigger charisma. I worked backstage on costumes, sewing shirts, and silently falling for him piece by piece, like some cliche story you only realize was a trap once you're in too deep. But everything shifted when I got pregnant. It wasn't planned, but once the shock faded, I felt an unexpected, overpowering excitement. Alan pretended to share it, saying all the right lines like he was still performing on a stage. But his actions? They betrayed him instantly. Gaming replaced conversations. His friends replaced responsibility. Any version of partnership I thought we had dissolved right in front of me while I kept telling myself he was processing the change. Meanwhile, my pregnancy was brutal. Months of vomiting, anemia that left me breathless, a back that felt like someone was twisting it in half daily. Today had been especially hard. After finishing work, I stopped at Trader Joe's and loaded the car with everything we needed for the week. When I got home, Alan was exactly where he always was, refusing to pause his game, refusing to help, telling me he was in the middle of something important. So I carried every single bag myself. Trip after trip, stairs after stairs. By the 6th round, I felt like my ankles were going to split open. When I finally collapsed into a chair, trying to steady my breathing, he hit me with that sentence. That vile, careless, humiliating sentence. And the laughter of his friends through his headset sealed it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I walked over, kissed his forehead like he was a clueless child, and told him I needed a shower. He blinked at me, confused. He expected a meltdown. He expected rage. He expected me to break. Instead, I broke free. The moment the water hit my skin, the tears came. Not soft ones, but raw, furious, awakening ones. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of clarity. Every red flag I had smoothed over for 5 years rose to the surface. Every excuse I had made for him turned to dust. This wasn't a bad moment. This wasn't stress. This wasn't pregnancy hormones. This was who he really was. And I finally saw it. I thought of the baby inside me, the daughter I was bringing into the world. Was this the man she'd learn love from? Was this the behavior she'd grow up thinking was normal? Would she learn to accept disrespect or learn to dish it out? Absolutely not. I stepped out of the shower, put on my comfiest maternity dress, and calmly told him I needed air. He barely looked. Up from his game. That was fine. It made leaving easier. I grabbed my hospital go bag, my documents, my laptop, and walked straight out the door. Now I'm in this hotel room, 7 months pregnant, heart pounding, future uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, I feel the faintest spark of freedom. Alan called twice, not to ask where I was. No. He wanted to know where the leftovers were. That alone told me everything. I know I need to leave him, but I'm terrified. The lease, finances, childcare, my pregnancy, all tangled together. Still, my mind keeps replaying that moment in the kitchen. The cruelty, the casual tone, the fact he wanted an audience. By the next morning, reality settled around me like a heavy fog I couldn't shake. I stared at my swollen belly, at the life fluttering inside me, and I realized something that made my chest tighten. I wasn't just saving myself, I was saving her. That thought alone gave me a strength I didn't know I still had. My sister Anne arrived at the hotel a few hours later, eyes red, jaw tight with fury on my behalf. I barely got 3 words out before she hugged me so tight I cried all over again. Not the angry clarity tears from the night before. These were release tears, safety tears. "We're going to figure this out," she kept repeating, and for the first time, I believed her. We spent the morning going over my options. She reminded me of something I had forgotten in the exhaustion of survival. Alan might be my husband, but he wasn't my owner. My life was still mine to protect. But she was right about something else, too. I couldn't disappear overnight. Not yet. My name was still on the lease. My clothes, belongings, documents were still in the apartment. I needed to return temporarily, pretend things were fine, and quietly prepare for the escape of my life. And, oh, bestie, the universe must have been on my side, because when I walked back into the apartment that evening, Alan didn't even look up from his game. He didn't ask where I'd been, didn't ask why I didn't come home, didn't ask why I had packed a hospital bag on a random weekday. His first words? "Oh, good, you're back. You didn't throw away the leftovers, right?" That man was so wrapped up in himself he didn't notice the storm gathering in the air around me. When I calmly brought up his comment from the day before, he rolled his eyes and sighed dramatically, like my feelings were some tedious inconvenience. "You're too sensitive. It was a joke. God, I can't say anything around you anymore without you getting emotional. Do you have any idea how hard this pregnancy has been for me?" For him, the audacity almost knocked the air out of my lungs. But I had a plan, and it required patience. So I swallowed every bitter word I wanted to scream and instead looked him straight in the eye and said, "You're right. I overreacted. I'm just tired and hormonal." The relief that washed over his face was instant. And disgusting. He thought I'd folded. He thought the leash was back in his hand. He thought everything was back to normal. But behind my calm smile, I felt something dark and powerful rising. Not fear, not anger, but resolve. From that moment on, I lived a double life. By day, I played the obedient wife, cooking, cleaning, nodding along to his stories, making sure he believed he had won. By night, I documented everything, every insult, every moment of neglect, every financial discrepancy, dates, times, screenshots, even recordings, the ones where he let the mask drop completely. My lawyer called it protective evidence. To me, it felt like gathering the final puzzle pieces of a life I was preparing to leave behind. I rerouted my direct deposit into a new account. I slowly reclaimed money from our joint account. Small amounts he wouldn't notice. I gathered documents, birth certificates, tax forms, bank statements. I found a small 2-bedroom apartment, clean, safe, ground floor with laundry and unit so I wouldn't have to climb stairs with a newborn. I packed my essentials quietly, in stages, storing them at Anne's house. Piece by piece, I dismantled the life he thought I was trapped in, and the more invisible I became emotionally, the worse he behaved. Now that he believed I'd accepted his cruelty, he stopped pretending, stopped hiding it, stopped caring. One night, he invited his gaming friends over without warning. I was lying in bed, back spasming so violently I could barely breathe, when he stood at the door and said, "Make yourself useful and order pizzas for the guys." When I said I was in pain, he scoffed. "Pregnancy isn't a disability. Women have been doing it forever. My mom worked until the day before she had me." A lie, one I later confirmed with his mother herself. But in that moment, I dragged myself out of bed, ordered the food, and paid for it from my account while his friends stared awkwardly, unsure whether to look at me or pretend I didn't exist. Later that night, after the guys left the apartment in a state that looked like a frat house crime scene, Alan climbed into bed and tried to initiate sex. When I said no, he rolled his eyes. Come on, it's not like you need to do anything. Just lie there like you usually do. I went to the bathroom and cried silently. Not because he hurt my feelings, but because I was so close to freedom I could taste it. One more month, and I'd be out. My doctor warned me that my blood pressure was dangerously high from stress. She said I needed rest, calm, peace. The three things Alan had drained out of my life long ago. The morning Alan left for his parents' house, he was in an unusually cheerful mood. Humming, grabbing snacks for the road, telling me not to do anything crazy while he was gone. He kissed my cheek like he was the perfect husband, heading off for a wholesome family weekend. He had no idea that was the last kiss he'd ever give me. The moment his car turned the corner, I exhaled for the first time in months. Anne arrived with her SUV 10 minutes later. Mia pulled up with a borrowed moving truck. And then, the biggest surprise, Alan's younger brother Rory showed up, hands trembling but determination all over his face. "He deserves this," he said quietly, "and you deserve better." We moved quickly, following the list I'd spent weeks preparing. Clothes first, baby items next, my documents, my personal belongings, the furniture that had belonged to me before our marriage, the sentimental things that actually mattered. Rory carried nearly everything heavy. At one point, when he lugged out my dresser, he whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner." It almost broke me, but nothing, absolutely nothing, felt more satisfying than packing up Alan's gaming PC. The one he'd bought under a credit card he secretly opened in my name. The one he spent hours on instead of attending ultrasounds. The one he used to mock me while his friends listened. I packed it carefully in its original box. Rory, torn between guilt and justice, grabbed it without a word and loaded it into the truck. By evening, my new apartment was full of boxes, but my chest felt lighter than it had in years. We ordered pizza, but this time it wasn't out of obligation. It was a celebration. We sat on the floor, exhausted, greasy, laughing, surrounded by the pieces of my new life. The next morning, we went back to finish. I cleaned the apartment spotless, not for him, but because I wanted to leave nothing he could use against me. Then I placed everything on the kitchen counter. Once I reached my new place, I called Alan. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail telling him he'd find everything he needed in the apartment and that I would no longer be reachable by phone. Then I texted the same message, blocked him, and emailed his parents before he could twist the story. Within an hour, he was blowing up every mutual contact we had. When he realized he couldn't reach me, he drove straight to Anne's house and pounded on her door for 10 minutes, yelling and demanding answers. The neighbor recorded everything, perfect evidence. That night, his emails came in waves. Anger, confusion, guilt trips, fake apologies, promises to change, declarations of love. The whole cycle of manipulation condensed into paragraphs. A.